You made a decision this morning. Maybe it was small. What to eat, which route to take, whether to hit snooze one more time. You didn't think about it much. You just chose. But here's the thing. That choice was not as free as it felt. In fact, most of the decisions you make every single day are not really decisions at all. They are echoes. Echoes of patterns carved into your brain by experiences you barely remember, by people you stopped thinking about years ago, and by a cognitive architecture that was never designed to navigate the world you actually live in. And the moment you understand how that works, you cannot unsee it. This is the story of how your brain makes up its mind, and why it's been lying to you about it. Start with the science. In 1983, a neuroscientist named Benjamin Libet ran one of the most unsettling experiments in the history of psychology. He hooked participants up to an EEG machine to measure brain activity. He asked them to flex their wrist whenever they felt like it. He also asked them to report exactly when they first felt the urge to move. What he found stopped the field cold. The brain began preparing for the movement about 550 milliseconds before the wrist actually flexed, but the participants didn't report feeling the urge until about 200 milliseconds before the movement. That gap, that 350 millisecond gap, is your brain making a decision without you. Your conscious awareness didn't initiate the choice. It arrived late to a party that was already starting without it. Libet called this neural activity the readiness potential. Some researchers have since debated the interpretation, but the core finding has been replicated in dozens of studies. Your sense of consciously initiating an action may, in many cases, be a kind of narrative your mind constructs after the fact. You feel like you decided. The story just happened to be written backward. This would be unsettling enough on its own. But it goes deeper. Your brain is not just slow to the decision. It is also systematically biased in ways you cannot easily detect. Psychologists Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky spent decades mapping these biases. Their work gave us something called prospect theory, the discovery that your brain does not weigh gains and losses equally. Losing something feels roughly twice as painful as gaining the same thing feels good. So when you face any decision involving risk, a new job, a conversation you've been avoiding, a financial choice, a relationship, your brain is already quietly putting its thumb on the scale. It is nudging you toward the option that avoids loss, even when the math doesn't support it. Even when the braver choice is clearly better. You think you're being rational, you are being ancient. Because that's the real origin of all of this. These biases are not errors in your software. They are features. They are adaptations your ancestors needed to survive an environment that no longer exists. Imagine a plains environment roughly 200,000 years ago. Your ancestor is foraging, scanning, deciding constantly. Do I eat that berry? Do I approach that stranger? Do I follow that animal or turn back now? The decisions that mattered were the ones with immediate physical consequences. The cost of a wrong guess was death. Speed mattered more than accuracy. Certainty mattered more than nuance. Your brain evolved to make fast, confident judgments using incomplete information, and then to feel certain that those judgments were reasoned conclusions. That brain is still the one you are carrying around right now. The one making choices about your career, your health, your relationships, your vote. The one that feels like it is carefully deliberating when it is often just pattern matching at high speed and generating a story to explain the result. Psychologist Jonathan Haidt built on this with what he called the social intuitionist model. His research suggested that in many cases, especially in moral and social decisions, you arrive at your conclusion first through intuition, a fast, automatic gut response, and then construct the reasoning afterward. He called this process post hoc rationalization. The reasoning is real. The logic feels genuine. But in many cases, it is not the cause of the decision. It is the justification for a conclusion you had already reached before you started thinking. This is not a small claim. Haidt ran studies where he presented people with morally ambiguous scenarios, situations designed to trigger a feeling of wrongness without any obvious victim. People would feel that something was wrong almost immediately. Then they would try to explain why. But when researchers removed all the standard reasons, no harm, no unfairness, no violation of rights, people still felt something was wrong. They would often reach a point they called moral dumbfounding, a state where they had run out of logical arguments but still felt deeply certain. Their intuition held firm. The reasoning had simply been enlisted to defend it. Think about the last time you changed your mind about something important. Not because someone gave you new information, but because someone gave you a new frame. A different way of looking at the same facts, and suddenly, what had seemed clear became complicated. Or what had seemed complicated became obvious. That shift was not a change in the data. It was a change in the story your brain was using to organize the data. Decisions are not just made from information. They are made from narratives. This is what psychologists Richard Nisbett and Timothy Wilson documented in a series of studies in the 1970s that became a landmark in cognitive science. In one experiment, participants were asked to choose between several identical pairs of stockings laid out in front of them. There was a clear pattern to which pair people chose. The one on the right was consistently preferred. But when asked why they chose that pair, no one mentioned position. They described qualities of the product: the texture, the sheerness, the feel. Qualities that were, in fact, identical across all pairs. Their minds had made a choice based on a subtle positional bias and then generated a confident, convincing reason that had nothing to do with the actual cause. The explanation was not a lie, it was genuine. That's the part that should stop you for a moment. Because if your brain is capable of generating entirely plausible, internally consistent reasoning for choices it did not actually make that way, how would you know when it's doing it? Here is where it gets practically useful. Not everything is lost to this machinery. Research on what's called implementation intentions, a concept developed by psychologist Peter Gollwitzer, shows that the way you frame your intentions dramatically changes follow-through, not by fighting the automatic system, by working with it. When people moved from vague goals like "I want to exercise more" to concrete if-then structures like "when Monday morning arrives, I will put on my shoes and walk for 20 minutes," the rate of follow-through nearly doubled. The brain responds to specificity. It needs a trigger, a context, a script. Give it one, and the automatic machinery runs in your direction instead of against it. The implication is not that you are a passenger in your own mind. It is that the driver and the passenger are in closer conversation than you thought, and that conversation has rules you can actually learn. Understanding this does not mean you start distrusting every choice you make. It means you recognize which choices deserve more deliberate attention and which ones your gut is probably handling reasonably well. It means you stop confusing confidence with accuracy. It means you notice when you are defending a position versus genuinely evaluating one. It means you hold your reasoning just a little more lightly. Because the alternative, the belief that your decisions arise cleanly from calm, rational analysis, was always a story your brain was telling you. It's a compelling story. It feels absolutely true. But it's the same brain that decided before you knew you were deciding that weighs loss twice as heavily as gain, that arrived at a conclusion and then sent your reasoning out to collect the evidence. That brain made a choice this morning. Something small. What to eat, which route to take, whether to hit snooze one more time. You didn't think about it much. You just chose. Now you know why.